Last time on the Piggyverse, Blast to the Past. But as for now, our protagonist has to face the suffering that is badge collecting. You see, this is actually the primary gameplay for this event. After the great Finn decided to go back to the ancient times of 2020, he also brought back this guy. Now it's up to us to go through insanity driving, pulse-pounding action gameplay, which is badge collecting. So if you've seen part 1 of my amazing video on the deep and interesting lore of the Piggyverse, which I totally understand, then welcome back. And if you're seeing this video for the first time, that's technically okay, as I will only cover the remaining 6 games that were released in part 2. And tier list. So anyways, we go into Piggy anti-delirium to get acquainted with the gameplay. To do so, he must first confront Mr. Rabbitman of a museum's parking lot. He explains that little brother destroyed his camping bus and he needs us to help him fight 3 items. After our buddy uploads his consciousness into the gaming device, he then gives us the information we need to find our first item. Now equipped with a solid lead for his Piggy anti-delirium 2022 video game, our protagonist now must go through the most difficult task, which is setting the clock. Surely the rest can't be that bad. So at least 3 minutes pass and now we have to infiltrate a storage to find our singular gear. Our tour guide explains that the gear is probably somewhere on the 2nd floor. The way to get there is for you to figure out. After we find the code, we now must use our hacker perk to find out that the code is code. I am not sure how people found this out. We must now pull down levers in a specific order, after which the game sends the minor inconvenience to stop me from playing the game. Now moving on to the mines. We have to use this conveniently placed boat to swim to our last objective. Our tour guide explains that what? Basically, the game sends the infected squad to stop me from playing the game. I am forced to take matters into my own hands. How big is this cave? This is half of the level. Finally, after all that work, we finally obtained the fuel canister. Our professional now tells us to go back to the menus to finally start the actual event. Even though I have absolutely no way of going back to the actual map. I think that's an oversight. We have finally arrived to the museum, again. In this final battle against your own memory, we need to seal the rift between timelines, as we are surely qualified enough for that. To play the game, we must look out for any items that clearly should not be there, which I am pretty bad at. After we successfully saved the universe, we see Mr. Rabbit guy again. Alright, so I saved the universe. Do I get anything from this? No, of course not. This was a pretty interesting experience. Although the singular game took me 4 hours to fully complete, I still somehow found myself to say this was a pretty enjoyable experience. A tier. So anyways, time for B.O.T, which I have absolutely no idea what it stands for. Inside of the game, we have to collect eggs, most of them being pretty hard to miss. Not only this, but we also have a boss fight. But first, in order to have the full gaming experience, we need to collect and find all the eggs before we can enter the boss fight. There was also a way to completely skip the egg collecting part, but if you did that, you were basically eliminating all the fun from orbit. Anyway, let's move on to the actual boss. In this battle, we are faced with a boss too large to be fun and are forced to enduring her onslaught of attacks. This battle is a classic case of wait for it to do anything, and when she does do something, it will usually hurt you. Fortunately, we can use the conveniently spawning cannons to defeat her. After doing that a total of 3 times, we now have to fight the boss in this really difficult and challenging boss fight. After which the game just ends. This one was pretty unique in the event considering what we had up to this point. And although it is pretty time consuming, I'll give it S tier. I enjoyed it quite a lot. Moving on to Piggy Watch Duty, I honestly thought this was going to be a major roadblock for me. That wasn't until I managed to complete it first try. The main gameplay is waiting for something to happen for 16 minutes straight. And although the gameplay seems a little simple, you have a paranoia meter which is basically useless. Although have fun trying to report anomalies while it's at full. Since the entire gameplay is just waiting, it will get a solid B tier. It's not really terrible, there's just nothing really interesting happening. Also, this enemy up here holding up a sign. I have absolutely no idea what I'm looking at. If you know, please tell me in the comments, thank you. Moving on to Piggy Man's Truth. Welcome to a game, probably. But first, our protagonist must enter this lab that was never there before and power up this portal. Seems simple enough. It only needs 2 light bulbs. The first one is clearly noticeable, while the other one is inside one of the greatest game mechanics ever. After we get into the next section of this event, we encounter the totally working bots. They don't work. That's literally the case for all of them. How did this go unnoticed while testing? Also, while I was trying to move the hammer to a more convenient place, it just fell to the ground. What amazing gameplay. After we go through some more stuff, we get to the final boss fight. In this battle, we use the locks and set them into this thing, and you win. This might just be the best game ever made. It will get C tier. With a little more polishing, it will be a solid B tier, I think. Moving on to Piggy Deceptive Tales. This one is the shortest out of every single game up to this point. We play as Finley for the first time ever, and our task is to help this guy. The gameplay plays out like an obby. You have to avoid the constantly spinning little brother and give these statues the respective weapons to win. There isn't anything bad about it, although the camera is just a little weird. Solid A tier. And now we move on to Piggy Find the Markers. Instead of this extremely interesting gameplay about finding markers, our protagonist must face the danger that is finding keys instead of markers. Luckily for us, the bot does not work, so we are free to play the game. There isn't really anything interesting happening except the characters being markers, so it will get A tier. It's not terrible. You might think we have ran out of games, but there is still one more super secret game, called the Piggy Museum. Technically being included in the event, there's also a badge you can get, though it does not count into the final score. All you have to do to get this badge is go through a series of extremely difficult challenges known as jumping on these rocks, S tier, and so we have fully ran out of games, and the tier list is now truly complete. Though some games were better, or worse, I still think everyone should appreciate the amount of work these developers put in to make their part of the event. Some of them work weeks, months even trying to bring a cool experience for the community to enjoy, and you shouldn't let a bug or two overshadow that. So maybe, in the end, all of the games are truly S tier. Anyway, I'm the Generic Penguin, and that was the Piggyverse. Thanks for watching. What do you mean there's a part 3?